What's kicking, everybody? It's been a while. We are back for another episode of Picking Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by my amigo Tom. Tom, how are you this week?
After Apple has tried their best to keep us down, we are back for normally we come back after a hiatus. We came back after a hiatus this time. And then there's no UFC cards in the future, but there's a ton of UFC stuff to break down, a ton of interesting happenings, including the UFC now no longer having USADA as their drug testing partner. We have a lot of change-ups on this card here specifically. McGregor is, I think, expecting now to come back in March. So plenty of stuff to talk about to fill up the time in the coming weeks devoid of UFC cards. But that's not today, because today we have a fantastic card for UFC 294 to talk about, and a little bit of a sprinkle of controversy, right? Because as soon as USADA announced in a scathing report that the UFC had chosen not to renew them for the 2024 year, and they directly pointed fingers at Conor McGregor as the reason why. Right as that information drops, it's all around, Volk taking Charles's place against Islam, and Kamaru taking Paulo Costa's place against Hamza. So a lot of changing up and a lot of big news layered in between more fanfare type of news. What do you think about that? The timing of all of this, and how much better, I guess you could say, this card got.
Well, it's like reminiscent of that Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce conspiracy, where
Mm-hmm.
Taylor Swift announced that she was going to the Jets Chiefs game the same day that like these reports were coming out that her private jets were, how much gas they expended over her tour.
Mm.
Anyways, so that way when you Google Taylor Swift Jets, it comes up with her announcement and pictures of her at the Chiefs Jets game.
I didn't even hear about that. I thought you were going to say the Taylor Swift controversy where her and Travis Kelce was just a ploy to get more Swifties over to the NFL and maybe potentially more NFL fans into Taylor Swift concerts, as if that's even possible. So I don't understand what the benefit is for her other than being in the news and this maybe taking some light off of heat that she's gotten. Interesting
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. The way the powers
For some reason,
manipulate.
your theory almost sounds like a little bit more far fetched than mine in a way. But I will say, like NFL ticket sales have gone up.
Way up.
Like Chiefs ticket sales have gone way up. I guess people want to go spot her. Anyways, the UFC is masterful at this. Like anytime negative news is about to drop, the UFC has something positive to release. So like the last time that this happened, I remember like literally coincided with it where Dana White was like on Instagram Live going like, here's the next few fights that we're going to announce. And that's the headline.
He dropped like 6 fights all at once.
Yeah, it's not like they tried to hide this at all. You did have, I forget who that was, if that was Hunter or which guy that was, but
I think it was Mick Maynard. If
right,
if you're
right.
talking about the things I think you're thinking about.
Yeah, when he got up there with the guy from the new drug or whatever it was, and just basically fired back at USADA.
Mhm.
They're definitely not trying to hide this at all. You do have to kind of respond to the scathing words about McGregor, and pretty much everybody does know that, like, or agrees that, the timing of this works out very well, them ditching USADA. We have heard things about unfair athlete treatment, like the 6 a.m. wake ups or the 4 a.m. wake ups and showing up at the gym mid training, whatever. But it does make you wonder because the UFC kind of like toted that as a reason why they were no longer with USADA was unfair athlete treatment. Does this allow more athletes to kind of like slip under the veil and use more methods to hide things and picograms and stuff like that, with things like maybe this new organization tells you when they're going to show up instead of surprising you and you have time to prepare a specimen or cleanse your system. I didn't really watch, the full announcement and see if that was something that they harped on, but I did see when Dana White was talking about it, just one of the main things was how many complaints they get from the athlete. You do hear that all the time, though.
We've heard a ton about that, and it's always interesting how sometimes the bigger fighters are the ones who are able to get away with those pulsing picograms, like John Jones or Sean O'Malley, who we haven't even heard, or Israel Adesanya is able to just kind of grow that gyno tit.
Right.
And there's no real investigation by USADA. And then we'll see, like, USADA will test, somebody like Jared Cannonier 55 times in a year or something. Like they call themselves the gold standard, yet there's such a skew in what fighters are getting tested a lot versus not. I mean, Yuri Prohashka was tested, I think it was like 3 times more than any other person, or
Yeah.
it might have been uh,
Yuri is definitely up there. I remember seeing his name top.
there, but I want to say it was someone up there who like didn't belong up there. Like, who did Yuri back elbow knock out?
Dominic Cruz.
Bruce, yeah. I think he was tested a ton for whatever reason. He's not a guy that like looks like that. But then you'll have other people who come into the UFC and then they'll get, a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 month ban for foreign substances that come in and then they look flabby. So it's like it seems like even USADA picks and chooses who they test and who they don't test. I don't know if the UFC was going, try and manipulating what USADA did, but it seems like if UFC was trying to manipulate them and USADA was saying we would only be manipulated to a certain point, and they drew the hard line on McGregor, it's interesting that they're saying, oh, well we're willing to concede on these lesser known fighters, but on this main fighter, we're going to make a hard stand. When I don't know how many other organizations are using USADA, but the UFC has to be their highest profile one, right? So,
Yeah, when I looked them up, it says they do like the Paralympics and stuff like that.
I bet that's a real revenue generator.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like some guys that were really highly tested, like last year, were Abu Izatar, Abu Bakar Nurmagomedov, Adrian Yanez was tested a lot. Yeah, so it's let's see, Alex Caceres tested quite a bit. He doesn't look like somebody that's using PEDs particularly. So yeah, it's definitely odd, and we'll see how it works out with this. Maybe we'll start seeing some guys getting like extremely juiced up, and then it'll get sauce, like or sauce, and then we'll start like seeing like Uberim type guys.
I mean, listen,
Imagine a post USADA. People are joking like post USADA John Jones. Who scares me is a post USADA Sergey Pavlovich, because the Russians do have a history of using PEDs in sports.
Oh yeah,
they basically invented PEDs in the Olympics.
Yoel Romero makes a comeback.
He could. He's on my team.
He's on my team. on my team.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I think Sergey Pavlovich is potentially so scary as you might even start seeing guys moving up in divisions. I think that would be hysterical if like guys just get so swole they have to move up.
I think that listen, there's an argument to be made, and this is all great stuff that we could talk about next week when we don't have a UFC card to go over. But the last thing I'll say about it is I think there is definitely a case to be made that if everybody's able to take a certain subset of things, that it creates a healthier situation where you could maybe get out of get out of the way, because everyone wants to talk about, oh, if they hit harder, you hit harder, you're faster. You also have faster reaction time. You have more energy. Fighters could, recover quicker. They could have longer careers. You could see better fights. There's less injuries. So I think instead of thinking about purely the positives in the disaster situation where somebody could get more hurt, you also have to think about the potential benefit to the athlete of using performance enhancing drugs, which has a negative stereotype to it. A lot of the stuff that are banned under USADA are not banned worldwide and are not banned and not necessarily that unhealthy for a regular human to take. It was made to kind of try to create a standard level that has gotten so blown out of proportion over the years that there's so many things that have been new and that have came out or been studied or have proven benefits that USADA doesn't allow you to use. There's an argument to be made that they're actually hurting the product in the cage than helping it by not allowing these guys to use some of the stuff that's helping them recover, and that's going to help them go out there and perform, because remember, they're already bringing their bodies to the brink of death to make this weight. So if you're going to minimize the amount of things that they can take, that's only going to help them not even necessarily gain a power advantage, but it's a gain an advantage over the competition. Well, maybe all of the competition should have that advantage and should have that ability to recover in a certain way. So I think there's plenty of information, there's plenty of conversation to be had there about whether USADA being so strict, like you said, during a weight cut, waking somebody up at 5 a.m. to test them after they've had 15 other clean tests. And here's the other thing: now we don't have to worry about or see people get clean jackets like I think Israel Adesanya got like, oh, here's my 50th clean test, and it's
I
like,
hate that shit, yo. I hate that shit so much.
or Kamaru Usman getting it, and you're like, what the fuck are we talking about here? Like, how does this guy make 170?
Right. But then there's also, yeah, there's guys that get tested way more, like Yuri Prohashka, and it's like,
Mhm.
where's his jacket? What's the deal? You know, I don't know. Anyways,
Anyway,
yeah,
UFC
I do
294.
want to say though, real quick,
Yeah.
I would love to see like two weight divisions, or like separate weight divisions, where it's like you have clean guys and then you just have guys on all sorts of steroids, jacked up, like those Russian fighting leagues. Just massive human beings going at it, but under like the UFC banner. I think that would be fucking awesome. All right, that's it. Let's jump in 294.
I'm glad you said that because I had like a bunch of thoughts. Like, hey, listen, if they're adults, it's not like they're children making these decisions. If they're an adult, 28, 29 years old, and they want to compete in the PED division, who are you to tell them that they can't?
Yeah, I could just see it opening up like odd doors, because now it's like what qualifies as a PED, and then you kind of like blur some lines. We could talk about it later. Maybe you're picking up what I'm putting down, but it's just it just opens up so many different
Mhm.
doors at that point. All right, we got like
With that being said,
as in somebody like ripping a line of cocaine before they step into the octagon or something. Rabies like in Blue Mountain State. Anyways, let's run through these prelims. All right.
I guess this is going to be the first one that we're going to want to talk about, and it's very notable, not for Bruno Silva, but it's notable because of Sharabutin Magomedov, the Bullet. He's a guy that we had seen, I mean, it might even have been a year ago, 9 months ago, get offered a UFC contract. Notice his distinct eye color difference. His right eye looks like he might be blind in one eye. At least that's what everybody was saying, is that he was going to be blind in one eye. Then you're saying, how is he going to, pass the commission's vision test? Well, somehow Michael Bisping was able to do it. You would think it would have improved from there, but there's all this, kind of all this chatter surrounding Sharabutin Magomedov that he's going to be really great. He's got one eye. How is he going to compete? So I think the fact that this is his first UFC bout is definitely making this one a prelim notable for me. And I would imagine because he's fighting against a guy from Brazil, he is a Russian, obviously, with a name like Magomedov, and Abu Dhabi has become these guys' de facto, home court, because I don't think they're going to be going up to Dagestan and fight in any arenas that may or may not be up there. So I think the closest they're going to get to moving into Russia, especially right now while it's a country at war, or World War III is potentially upon us, I think they're going to stay safe in Abu Dhabi. And, I don't think the UFC is going to try this guy out there against somebody that they think he's going to lose, or giving him a good name because I think they believe in him. And listen, I've watched some of his tape. He's a striker that has a really good Russian background in wrestling that you would expect from guys from this region. And what's going to be interesting is he looks very jacked. As we're still in the USADA era, you have to do your 6 months, as they were such a hard line with Conor McGregor. I don't know if that played into this at all. So I'm interested to see what he's going to look like as fight week goes on. But I think that he should have all of the intangibles. Wrestling generally beats jiu-jitsu, especially when the guy's from Russia. So I'm going to have to give him the advantage if the fight goes to the ground. The only thing that I wouldn't give him the advantage of is overall UFC experience, but he's got 11 fights. A couple of those may have been, you look at 4 fights ago, 27 and 21, but then he's picking up in competition. So hard to tell. His most recent fight against 7-6, in which he won by TKO via knee, as you see there. So interesting level of competition he's faced thus far. Bruno Silva, 2-3 over his last 5. Alex Bejeda, he lost to. Gerald Mishard, he lost to on the ground, proving that he can be submitted, even though he's got some decent jiu-jitsu. Beat Brad Tavares, which is a pretty solid win at this point against an aging Brad Tavares, but he's still dangerous, and a loss to Brendan Allen. So the ground game has proven to be Bruno Silva's kryptonite, amongst other things. But I think Sharabutin Magomedov presents a really interesting challenge for him, where he can go toe-to-toe with him on the feet, offer some power, offer some speed, have decent intangibles when it comes to fighting and knowing how to piece things together. And then having that ground game, having that ability to submit you, I think makes this a pretty safe bet for Sharabutin Magomedov, the debuting fighter at -200. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, I just don't think he's going to use his ground game. Like I feel like Bruno Silva in this fight's going to be the one that's more likely to go for the takedowns. Because Magomedov is an incredible striker, highly touted, great kickboxer coming out of that region. Obviously has a ground game. Just it just comes with the territory. But Bruno Silva, he tried to take down Alex Pereira a couple times. Alex Pereira eventually knocked him out. Gerald Meerschaert submitted him. Bruno Silva's kind of become one of these guys that they just like roll out to fight. To build a guy up per se, because he is like, it's not like he just looks totally inept. Like he's definitely a good fighter. He's got some solid wins over some solid names over his time in the UFC. But when they have one of these guys that they can boost up a little bit, they seem to put him out in front of Bruno Silva. And that seems to be the case this week. And I think, it's going to be an entertaining fight. It's going to be a great fight to open the card with. Like, I think the people that know that are going to this card, like we've been to the UFC live, and a lot of people don't fill in for the early prelims. I think this is going to be one of those fights that, because of the region and everything, it's and the name, with Sharbud and Magomedov, not just because he's Magomedov, he's very popular in the region. The kickboxing is just so impeccable. Yeah, with all that being said, I have him winning. I think it's going to be a fun show in front of the home crowd. I think he's going to knock out Bruno Silva, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to open up with, and then it's going to die down a little bit after that fight. Just for a quick second, because we got Jinyu Frey versus Victoria. How you say that? Dudavka.
Dudakova is how I would say it, but who knows if I'm right.
What do you think?
I mean, listen, I think there's the most telling thing about this is obviously Vegas is giving her minus 375 favorite. She's going to have the home court advantage being from Russia. So I'm going to want to lean onto that side. She's 24 years old and, pretty attractive. Not to say that Jinyu Frey is not attractive, but you look at her three most recent losses: Elise Reed, Polyana Viana, Vanessa Demopoulos, which was a split decision. She's 38 years old. It seems like, similar to what you were saying, how they trot Bruno Silva out there against somebody that they want to hype up and maybe want to build up and want people to get some eyeballs on. I think potentially that's what they're doing here with Victoria Dudakova and Jinyu Frey. So I think Jinyu Frey at 38 years old on a 3-fight losing streak, 11-9 overall. I don't think she has much to offer the UFC other than fighting out her contract and another body on the roster, where I think Victoria Dudakova, 7-0, Russian, home court, 24 years old, a little bit of the bigger fighter here. Her competition obviously is not going to be to the caliber of Jinyu Frey's, but Jinyu Frey hasn't been passing all these tests anyway. So for all of those reasons, she had a unanimous decision win on the Contender Series. Her first fight into the UFC, she dislocated Estela Nunes' elbow. So, she's got a strong ground game. I think Jinyu Frey is it's her fight to lose here.
You think it's Jinyu Frey's fight to lose?
I think Jinyu Frey is going out there with the expectation that she will lose. I don't know not in her own head, but the UFC and everybody watching, just looking at the stats here, I would have to imagine there's going to be a heavy favorite on Victoria Dudakova making her debut here. A lot of people saying by decision because it's women's MMA. This is harder to pick. I would say decision or submission is probably your two strongest chances of happening.
Yeah, I agree with what you were saying about Jinyu Frey being someone that kind of just gets put out there for up and coming contenders potentially. Absolutely agree. You touched on like Elise Reed, Polyana Viana, Vanessa Demopoulos, her last 3 losses, all like rising names within the UFC right now. I do think it's funny they tend to do this with like these more regional cards. We see it on the UK cards a lot. I think that the UFC should offer that to like their lower tier fighters. It's like, yo, do you want to just travel the world? Like, we'll reserve you for these international cards if you just want to go be a mid-tier scrub. And you can take your family on vacation to that country for a week. Like, we'll put you up in Abu Dhabi in lieu of some payment. Just enjoy a vacation on us. I think maybe some of them would sign on for that.
I mean, it may be, kind of falling into anonymity, but with that being said, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad option if you forget about the potential for injuries and having to train all the time. But I mean,
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying he would be on every single card. Anyways, it's a stupid idea because nobody gets into the UFC or begins this career hoping to be somebody mid-tier and settling to be like ruled out. Boxing is entirely different. We see it with
Boxing is entirely different.
yeah, you have guys that are paid to lose. At least not in the UFC, that we know of yet.
That we know of, exactly.
Yeah, they'll come out in like an ESPN 30 for 30 years from now. All right, next fight. What do you got?
Javid Basharat taking on Victor Henry. Victor Henry is a wild fighter. He goes in there with the intention and the idea that we're going to get into a scrap. He's going to take some licks. He's going to give some licks. He's going to be a volume guy. He's going to have some quicker strikes, but he's a guy who's willing to get hit. Whereas Javid Basharat, the Snow Leopard, he is a lot more calculated with his strikes. He's intentional. He has good fight IQ. He's got good power. He's 14-0. He is a heavy favorite here. Afghanistan versus United States when it comes to Abu Dhabi. Gonna have to give it to Afghanistan in this regard, that he's the kind of home fighter, if you will. He's also the younger guy. He's a little bit bigger. He's fighting out of a better gym. Everything kind of leads me to believe this is going to go in the Snow Leopard's way. What do you think?
Absolutely agree. Like you said, very, he's precise in there and he's crisp and he executes all those important words that football coaches used growing up. Absolutely agree about Javid Basharat. And then when it comes to Victor Henry, last fight was good, entertaining, but it's going to be a Basharat victory in that fight. Totally agree. What do you got? What's up next?
The last one I got is Tim Elliott taking on Muhammad Mokaev. He's a name that we've heard of and that we've seen. Muhammad Mokaev, last time we saw him, he got his knee hyperextended. It looked like it was going to pop through the backside, but he didn't tap, and he was able to pick up the win. The problem with Muhammad Mokaev is we don't see him going out and dominating people. We don't even see him getting a ton of finishes anymore. He did finish Rafael Filho after the rear naked choke, but that was after basically anybody would have tapped to that knee bar that he was in. He actually, you know what? Maybe I misspoke saying that he doesn't get a ton of finishes. 4 out of his last 5 are finishes. But against a savvy guy like Tim Elliott, Muhammad Mokaev he's called the Punisher, but he has been kind of pushed a little bit in terms of the level of competition he's faced. He hasn't, been thrown out to the wolves, so to speak, where he's fighting against top-level competition. Despite being 9-0, he is only 23 years old. I think he is going to get the win over Tim Elliott here. But Tim Elliott, he's a savvy vet. He's got a strong ground game. He's got a pretty decent stand-up game too. So I think this is going to be a really strong test for Muhammad Mokaev. He should win this one. I'm just not as sure of him taking over and getting a submission win here as maybe some of the guys in the past, especially who knows what his leg is going to look like and come back. I mean, that was potentially a career-ending looking injury. If you blow apart your knee in that way, I mean, he was totally, almost 360 or 180, whatever you want to call it. He looked like half of a circle is what his knee was in the position of. So extremely curious to see what Muhammad Mokaev looks like this time out. But we got to give him credit. We know that he is mentally strong, and he's not going to give in to any type of taps, even if it means blowing up his knee and ruining his career. So props to Makhachev on that.
Yeah, props to him. It's fortunately we haven't seen anybody really in that position where they've been like super, at least in the modern era, where they've been like super unintelligent and just not tapped when it's like getting that bad. That's how I thought it was going to go for Muhammad Mokaev, year ending 3 type stuff. But I'm actually throwing the money on Tim Elliott this week, responsibly, not financial advice, rather. But Tim Elliott at plus 370, and especially after seeing what Rafael Filho did to Muhammad Mokaev and the uncomfortable positions that he put him in, I think a crafty vet like Tim Elliott, especially like post-divorce Tim Elliott. Remember when he told everybody his wife was cheating on him with who was that? I know his wife was Gina Mazzani.
Roman Dolidze, I think.
No. It was somebody else, not Roman Dolidze. It was an American. It was one of his teammates. But anyways, I was trying to see if I could find. Oh, Kevin Kroom. It was Kevin Kroom. So, anyways, yeah, Kevin Kroom and Gina Mazzani were having an affair, and Tim Elliott.
Well, Roman Dolidze is definitely caught up in some sort of love triangle as well, too.
Probably. But yeah, this was a fun one. Anyways, he goes out there, looked stellar in his last fight. After announcing all that stuff, I think like the week of that fight. And, I just think he's going to present challenges to Muhammad Mokaev, crafty vet, been at it for a while. And Mohamed Mokaev has not fought anyone on par with Tim Elliott just yet. My cat is being like extremely, I don't even know what the word is to use. Like he's just like seeking attention right now and acting ridiculous, jumping all over everything. But so yeah, Tim Elliott's going to present challenges to Muhammad Mokaev that he hasn't gotten yet. And if Rafael Filo, who I believe it was his UFC debut in that fight, like off the street, short notice, could put him in uncomfortable positions, I think Tim Elliott's going to be able to do the same and more. So I'm going with Tim Elliott this week.
For the record, it was JP Bays saying his ex-wife Cheyenne Vilsimus.
Oh yeah,
Lismus was with cheating on her with Roman Dolidze.
right.
So plenty of cheating to go around the UFC, both marital, relationship, and steroidal.
Jesus. Oh, that's a good one. All right, main card time.
Saeed Nurmagomedov.
Sorry.
No worries.
I want to mention Muhammad Yahya. Is he Ronnie Yahya's brother?
I thought about that. I didn't look into it. I think that's a unique enough last name that it might be.
Yeah, I can't get a straight answer on Google. But you know, it is what it is.
And
right.
It's probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, main card time. Saeed Nurmagomedov versus Gafurov. Cat, please relax yourself.
Relax yourself. Listen, you got Milan Gafurov, who in his UFC debut lost a unanimous decision to John Castaneda. That's not something that is out of the norm to lose in your UFC debut. He got in off of the LFA, which is a solid promotion to come back in on or in from. He also lost his contender series, I guess you'd call it a debut. Opportunity is probably more accurate to Chad Adhaliger via split decision. Muin Gafurov is a guy who I think, when it comes to each area of MMA, is kind of middle of the road. And I think Saeed Nurmagomedov, while he can make some mistakes, I think he has really above average striking. Sometimes that can play to his disadvantage because he will try to do things that are maybe a little bit more than what the situation calls for. Instead of going for just a leg kick or a body kick or a head kick, he'll try and do maybe a 360 kick or a tornado kick. He'll try to do something over flashy that maybe doesn't call for it, which kind of goes against what the Nurmagomedov and your Dagestani type of approach is don't open yourself to any risks. Don't allow the fight to get you out of what you know that you are the best at. With that being said, I don't think Gafurov is going to present too many challenges to Saeed Nurmagomedov, whether it's on the ground or it's standing. I think they're kind of offering up Gafurov to Saeed Nurmagomedov to get him back on track. You know, this is going to be a heavily Russian and a Middle Eastern type of fan base that are going to be tuning in, especially to watch their guys that's going to be in that area of the world. I think this is a chance for Nurmagomedov to right the ship, get over that last loss to Jonathan Martinez by decision, and get back in the win column. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Muin Gafurov, definitely think he's on this card because he's also a regional name from Tajikistan. Yeah, and I think Saeed Nurmagomedov, while he's not related to the other ones, he's pretty good in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Great stand-up game. Like you said, he overcompensates quite a bit. All right, what do we got next?
Oh. Sorry, I was looking him up a little bit more. But next fight up the card, and it's a short main card. We got five fights here. Ikram Alexgarov taking on Warley Alves. Warley Alves stepping in after was it Nasruddin Imavov had to drop out? Yep, Nasruddin Imavov dropped out. Now you have Ikram Alexgarov taking on Warley Alves. Easy for you to say. Warley Alves coming up from 170 pounds. 2-3 in that division over his time there. Has a loss to Randy Brown by submission. He got knocked out by Jeremiah Wells 2 years ago. 8 months ago, he lost a split decision to Nicholas Dalby. Just never really able to get it going. He did get an uppercut TKO for Sergio Moraes, and he did have a TKO from he did TKO Munir Lazzez as well. I think coming up on short notice is not necessarily going to play in Warlley Alves' favor, although the 170-pound fighters are traditionally a little bit better than the 185-pound fighters when it comes to pure skill. I think Ikram Alexkarov, being at his size, being a little bit bigger, being a little bit longer, I think he's just going to have too much to overcome in order to. No, sorry. I think he is going to present too much for Warlley Alves to overcome in this fight here. I think he's going to be solid on the ground. He can present some stand-up difficulties. I think Warlley Alves is going to be your more traditional stand-up fighter. He's not going to have a ton of ground game that he's going to go out there and try to implement, especially against a Russian fighter on their home turf here. I'm going with Ikram Alexkarov. He's the bigger guy. He's been preparing for a fight. He is used to the weight. And, there's just a lot of things going against Warlley Alves. The only thing that I would say is if Warlley Alves' corner here is the fact that he's taking this fight on short notice and he doesn't have much to lose. So, that could potentially be a dangerous notion for a fighter coming in, not having much to lose, having all of the, having all of the excuses kind of on your side plays to him. But I think Ikram Alexkarov is probably a better fighter all and around. Plus, they're going to be at his weight class. Plus, he would have been training for this. And I don't think Warlley Alves is that much different than Nasruddin Imavov. It's not like he was training for a ground fighter and now he's going to be fighting somebody who is a stand-up fighter. So not a ton of changes for Ikram to implement when it comes to the training camp. So I'm on Ikram Alexkarov, 14-1, minus 400 favor. Shocker there. You have 63% of Tapology thinking he's going to knock out Warlley Alves, 97% comfortable with him getting the win. What do you think?
I'm obviously on Ikram Alexkarov. We saw him in person knock out Phil Hawes on the Sterling Cejudo card. The power that this guy has is ridiculous to knock out Phil Hawes the way that he did. That was a fun knockout out of nowhere, and then followed up by a couple of extremely powerful shots. I think it looks more of the same this week. I actually think Phil Hawes is better than Warlley Alves. Especially when it comes to the stand-up, the short notice is not going to play in his favor at all. Sure, Ikram Alexkarov has a lot to lose because he is one of these big up-and-coming names in the UFC right now. But yeah, I think he's going to knock out Warlley Alves and leave him sprawled out on the canvas. I don't think it's going to be a pretty sight for him post Ikram Alexkarov victory. So I got a standing knockout, not even a TKO going on the ground. I just think he's going to flatline him on his feet. All right, you want to talk about this next one? Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker.
And he has fought Hamzat. He has fought Dennis Talulin. I mean, there's a couple of UFC fighters on the record here that he fought outside of the UFC. Moving on up the card, Magomed Ankalaev taking on Johnny Walker. This is a really interesting one because Johnny Walker there's basically two sides of Johnny Walker. Either you get a kind of fun-loving Johnny Walker, moron who will go in there and hurt himself after winning or just make bad decisions inside the cage, leave himself open to get knocked out or hurt. Or you'll have a really intentional fighter who goes out there, has a solid chin, and can utilize that power to knock some guys out. I just don't think he's going to get the chance against Magomed Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev he's going to be not the longer fighter in this bout, but I think he's going to be the more intelligent one. He's going to be hesitant, which is not something that I usually give as a positive to somebody, but I think Johnny Walker can get so aggressive and get so caught up in the fight that I think Magomed Ankalaev is going to stay cerebral, and I think he'll be able to get some wins. But I wouldn't be surprised if Johnny Walker goes out there and lands a couple big ones and is able to steal it from Magomed Ankalaev. I think his wild style can present a matchup issue for Magomed Ankalaev, who he likes to be reserved. He likes to throw out one or two punches at a time. He only shoots when he moves forward, and I think Johnny Walker always moves forward. So I think Johnny Walker has the potential to put Magomed Ankalaev on the back foot and keep him uncomfortable. I wonder what cardio is going to be like for Johnny Walker, having to make the trek all the way over, but he's got that 7-inch reach advantage to rely on here. So it's going to be an interesting one. My official pick is actually going to be with Johnny Walker. As I'm talking through it here, I think Johnny Walker presents a wild style, unpredictable in nature, and I think Magomed Ankalaev is that's a lot to try and piece together and figure out. I think Johnny Walker, if he comes in as a dedicated fighter, as somebody who's going to show off some potential fight IQ here. I think he's got the interesting abilities and style and matchup to be able to put Ankalaev on the back foot and capitalize on some of the kind of passive way of how Ankalaev fights. What do you think?
I agree with you in those aspects, right? That Johnny Walker is more high activity than Magomed Ankalaev, and it's going to present more challenges in that aspect, right? You look at the Jan Blachowicz fight, and that was definitely that. I think that was high output, high activity. Both men were tired and they were still throwing. I think that fight was probably a good learning experience, not only for Magomed Ankalaev, but then also for future opponents, because we saw just how badly his front leg got chewed up by the leg kick. Now, Jan Blachowicz does have one of the most powerful leg kicks, it looks like, in the UFC, and I don't think that Johnny Walker's is up to par. His look more just to touch than to really inflict the damage that Jan Blachowicz does. My feelings on Johnny Walker overall is that he's a goof. He's like a living cartoon character. The way that he was knocked out by Jamal Hill was just like absolutely ridiculous. He does the most ridiculous things. I don't think that he's, even though yes, he presents higher activity, higher output, weird striking. I think Magomed Ankalaev, because of the reservations and the wildness of Johnny Walker, he's going to sit back, be a little bit more reserved, pick his shots. He doesn't have as much threat in terms of power coming his way as he has in his last couple of fights, in my opinion, at least. And I don't think he's going to finish Johnny Walker, but I think he's going to land the higher significant strikes, whatever that means, and control him more up against the cage and eventually take him down and do things with him there. But all in all, yeah, I think it's going to be a 30-27 fight for Magomed Ankalaev over Johnny Walker. But I wouldn't mind seeing Johnny Walker get comically knocked out again. I think that would be pretty funny. So you want to move it on up to the co-main?
Yeah, I mean, I can see both of those things happening. It's just so unpredictable because Johnny Walker is so unpredictable. So
he's a cartoon character. Like I'm waiting for him to pull one of those like fucking Acme hammers out and smack Magomed Ankalaev at the face-offs. He's ridiculous.
He is a goof. He is a goof.
Yeah.
New fight: Kamaru Usman taking on Khamzat Chimaev. Kamaru stepping in for Paulo Costa. This is his first fight at 185 pounds.
It's also his first fight after 2 losses back-to-back to Leon Edwards.
And it's his first fight following a knockout.
Second fight. He lost the last one by decision.
Oh, right. Duh. Anyway, forget I said that. I think this is going to be a tough one for him. I mean, I think Kamaru Usman is taking it on short notice because he doesn't expect Khamzat Chimaev to have a level of grappling that maybe he does or doesn't have, or Kamaru expects to be able to thwart that defense, any type of takedown that Khamzat might bring on, which I actually kind of expect him to.
Before you move on, I just want to see he's away from everybody that he fought down there. And then this is a legacy fight, too, because Khamzat is potentially the biggest challenge that he could face at the moment. That's an available challenge, So I think that's what it comes down to. Like Kamaru Usman, as much shit as I would have liked to talk about him for the past couple of years, was a great champion. And even though he fought some guys, like a little bit of a carousel, he did fight like whoever the top competition was. And I think that's what it really comes down to for him, was this fight was available and it's a challenge. So, great champion. Got to give him his props. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Anyways, I digress. Please continue. I'm sorry for cutting you off with that nonsense.
No worries. No worries. I think you make a lot of good points as to why he's taking it. And I think he feels that he'll be able to have the stronger grappling ability. And maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I mean, he's 36 years old. He's had bad knees for years. And now with maybe a confidence issue, who's to say that there is or there isn't? But I think moving up in weight for him is going to be, it's going to be a challenge. Whereas Khamzat Chimaev was struggling to make 170 to begin with, and I think Kamaru was thinking, if Khamzat has to struggle to make 170, I'll be able to take advantage of him maybe not rehydrating as well, and be able to have more of a successful time. I don't think Kamaru Usman is going to try any takedowns. I don't think he's got the knees for it. We haven't seen him do many takedowns really in a long time. I think really only against Colby Covington that I remember, and I could be way off, did he attempt any takedowns. And I don't even think he was able to really finish them completely. I think Hamza Chimaev may try to take Kamaru Usman down, and I don't know if Kamaru is going to be able to thwart them because nobody tries to take Kamaru Usman down because of his wrestling pedigree. But it hasn't really been tested all that much as of late. And as you get older, and you get against guys who are probably supposed to be in the 85-pound division naturally, 29 years old, and have the furious fighting style of Hamza Chimaev, I think the first and the second round is going to be truly the test for Kamaru Usman. I think there's only three fights or three rounds. I can't imagine why it wouldn't be. So maybe that's another thing that Kamaru Usman's not used to is a 3-rounder. He's a guy who's won a lot of decisions and he's gotten 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rounds, not 6, 5 rounds to play with. I think Hamza Chimaev used to the furious pace, used to the 3-rounder. I think that goes in his favor. I think being on his home turf and not having to, fly super far, that plays in his favor. I think he hasn't fought in a while, so he should be relatively fresh. That plays in his favor. I think Kamaru Usman doesn't have that great of a striking game. I think his striking game was aided by the fact that people were afraid he was going to go for the takedown, or they had to be completely one-dimensional, not use any of their ground game. So I think a lot of the things that made Kamaru Usman good at 170 aren't around in this fight. So I'm actually going to go with Hamza Chimaev. I know that that's not a sexy pick. But yeah, I'm going with Hamza Chimaev. I think he's got more power than Kamaru. I mean, Kamaru Usman has only knocked out Leon Edwards. Or no, he hasn't knocked out Leon Edwards. He got knocked out by Leon Edwards. He's only knocked out George Masvidal and I think one other guy. Everything else has been a TKO. So with that being said, I don't think Kamaru Usman has the power to go out there and finish Hamza Chimaev. I think if that's his strategy, it's going to go to decision. I don't think he's going to have a great time being able to out-wrestle Hamza Chimaev, maybe in the second round or the third. But I think at that point, Hamza Chimaev is going to kind of hurt Kamaru Usman. I mean, we saw him get flatlined. Who's to say where his chin is now? And against a furious pace from Hamza Chimaev, I think he could be in some real hot water here, but he is probably the more intelligent fighter. He's got a better fight IQ. I'm just worried that he used I don't want to call him a weight bully, but he used his size to, maneuver guys around the cage to, get some, use muscle and get takedowns that he may have not otherwise get, and use his muscle to stay on top of people when he was using his grappling. And when he was not using his grappling was always there as a threat. So I think Kamaru Usman is not going to have some of the intangibles that led him to be so dominant at 170. I think there's a really bad fight for him. But then again, he's got every excuse in the book. He took it on short notice. It's up a weight class. He wasn't even training to come back at 85. He hadn't even mentioned going to 85 until this fight presented itself, and it happened to be at 85. So I think Hamza, who's been fluctuating between 70 and 85, could probably fight in both, has fought in both, could probably be successful in both. I don't think he can make 170 reliably, so he was probably going to be forced into 85 anyway. So, and I think that might even been why he had to take the fight against Paulo Costa to begin with, to force him into 85. So for all those reasons being said, I think I got to go with Hamzat here. But it's going to be an interesting fight. I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, obviously, like all signs point towards Hamzat Chimaev, right? Like everything that you said, short notice, this, there's a lot that I think you can present the solid case, what you did for Hamzat Chimaev winning this fight. There's just a few things that I think we need to look at when it comes to Leon Edwards in this one, and that is that the pressure is off. Because now Kamaru Usman has the ability in his career to say, like, you know what, short notice fight against Hamzat Chimaev, I'll take it. I'm not defending a belt. This isn't like the stakes are super high. If I lose, I go back down to 170. If I win, I stay at 185 and climb the ranks here. They already announced that whoever wins this one is potentially fighting for the next title because fuck Duplessis. But, so it's like the pressure isn't on him for the first time in a long time. I also like the fact that he's been back at Sanford MMA, now Killcliff MMA, training with the guys like Gilbert. And he's going to have Henry Hooft in his corner, and he's going to have Trevor Whitman. And, the things that got him to where he was to begin with. And what helped him stay there, right? Those special camps, because we know like those guys, those camps have both produced a lot of great fighters. So bringing them together is a very positive thing for Kamaru Usman. When it comes to size, even though Usman was at 170, he's still comparable in size to Hamzat. They have practically the same reach, and Hamzat's 2 inches taller than him, which if this is going to be more of a wrestling thing, when it comes to leverage and things like that, that could potentially benefit a guy like Kamaru Usman, who has historically great takedown defense. Like obviously, yeah, like you said, people don't shoot on him that often, but guys like Colby Covington did, and Colby Covington, we know what he could do to somebody. When it comes to wrestling. So, like Kamaru Usman, I think he's going to be able to defend the takedowns from Hamzat, and then I think he's just going to pistol jab the shit out of Hamzat in this fight. Like, I think it's going to be Hamzat coming forward and doing something a little wacky like he did against Gilbert Burns. And there were a lot of times in that fight against Gil Burns where you saw Gil kind of step down and just pop that jab off, pop that like just a piston. And I think that you're going to see that from Kamaru Usman quite a bit in this fight because the openings are going to be there. He's not fighting a tactician kickboxer in the way that he was against Leon Edwards. He's fighting more of a wild man. And I think that in that regard, it benefits a guy like Kamaru Usman, who we only saw his striking get better over the years. Like, I think that, there's like that thing where Leon Edwards had his number, knocked him out, and then like really had his number in the second fight. And I think that was probably more of a reaction to losing to Leon the first time around, more than anything, because we've seen him rise to the test and rise to the occasion. We've seen him fight guys on short notice. I think that Kamaru Usman is a high value dog in this one. And a couple of months ago, I wrote him off as like washed up, done, finished. But there's just certain things in this fight that, like, I could see it going either way. I'm not hard pressed to be like, no, Kamaru Usman's gonna win this fight. But there's just a lot of things lining up in his favor, I do believe. And the pressure is off. It's not necessarily like a legacy fight anymore. This is, hey, I could do it. I'm going to step in. It's going to be fun and it's going to be a challenge. And I think it'll be fun. And when it comes to a 3-round fight, dude, he gets to empty his gas tank 2 rounds earlier now. Like, I think that we are going to see a flurry of striking from Kamaru Usman come that last round because he's never been able to unload like that. After 25 minutes of fighting, it's so difficult to do. But I'm sure after 15 minutes, you've still got a lot of shit in the gas tank that you would have been saving for those extra 10 minutes, So I don't think either of these guys are going to be able to finish each other. It would kind of make me a little bit sad if Hamzat finished Kamaru Usman because he's like just, mowing down all of our heroes. But I think that Kamaru Usman obviously has the tools, and I think that a lot of things are lining up for him, and I think that he's a very high value dog. So I'm going for Kamaru Usman this week.
I think that's the best thing that you said there was that he's a high value dog because I'm expecting Hamzat Chimaev, for all the reasons I stated earlier, to go out there and get the win. I don't think, when you look at Kamaru Usman and the people that he's fought in terms of strikers, I mean, there's not very many. He beat George Masvidal, who's damn near 40 years old. He beat Colby Covington, who strikes a lot, but that's not his forte. He's a decent to above average striker at best. It's volume and cardio is how he beats people. He's, got the win over Gilbert Burns, which that wasn't a great showing by Gilbert Burns. I think even Gilbert would say that. He was a natural 155 or so, a little bit small for the matchup. I think we've maybe created this bias in our heads about Kamaru Usman's striking ability because of the level of competition he's fought in championship bouts, but it hasn't been a high level of striking at all. In fact, the highest level of striker that he's faced in the last 3 or 4 years is probably Leon Edwards, in which he lost twice to. Now, I'm not saying Hamzat Chimaev has a fantastic pedigree of striking himself, but he has shown an ability to not get hit, to hit people, and he's showed a great chin. And knocking people out is not something Kamaru Usman has done a ton. He has to hurt you, and he's got to get on you, and he's got to hammer away until the ref pulls him off, which is something that I don't think Hamzat Chimaev is going to find himself in a position of. I think this one is going to ultimately go to decision, and it's anyone's call here. I love your idea of taking Kamaru Usman at plus 235 as a high value dog. Kamaru Usman by decision, I think would be very interesting. But then again, we're in Abu Dhabi. Hamzat, from wherever he came or was, I think he was a Swedish maybe at one point, is now claiming, Dubai and United Arab Emirates. So this is truly hometown, home cooking. If there's ever going to be a fighter who's going to get a biased judges scorecard, the UFC would probably want it to be Hamzat, continue that hype train in Abu Dhabi. I don't think the UFC really benefits a ton. Not that they're having total domain over everything, but if there was such a conspiracy that they have influence over the judging, I don't think they would necessarily pick Kamaru Usman over Hamzat Chimaev. With that being said, I would love to hear your counterpoint. However, I got to run. So
Yeah.
I'm going to let you give your counterpoint. I'm going to peace out, and I'm interested to watch this back later to find out who you're picking for the main event. I'm pretty sure I know who you're going to pick. I'm actually going to be going with the contrary. I'm going to have to go with Islam Makhachev because it's in his neck of the woods. He's been training, and he's probably going to be a little bit bigger. And I think maybe Alex Volkanovski is going to be maybe a little bit too comfortable with his takedown defense and thinking, oh, if this guy gets on top of me, I can find my way out. And, I don't know that that's the case. So I think he's against an even bigger wall potentially this time. But I got to run. Sorry for my quick out, but I know you can take us home. So
All right. Take it
thanks
easy.
for sticking with us.
Yes. Have fun. All righty. So, I'm going to go. Well, the last thing I want to say, just counterpoint to what Tom had to say about that Kamaru Usman winning potentially doesn't benefit the UFC. I disagree on that point simply because, Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman hadn't fought in years, and you have history between Kamaru Usman and Sean Strickland. I believe the two of them fought in the past. I'm sure that the UFC would love to cash in on that. Plus, you have a former champion who maybe he wasn't necessarily like a sellout guy every time, but he was a long time champion. So, sure, Hamzat. I just think either like you can't really sell Hamzat as anything other than a villain. Like Hamzat, he's too ugly to be a household name. Number one, uh, hard to understand. Like I just don't necessarily agree that Hamzat winning is just like a great monetary outcome for the UFC. And then when it comes to the main event, I am going to be biased as anything, and I'm going to go with Volkanovski. That's my guy. I realized about midway through us filming this episode that I wasn't wearing my Alexander Volkanovski shirt that I always wear when we're filming an episode about him. I'll be wearing it Saturday night, and hopefully I can wear it proudly on Sunday. Well, Saturday afternoon. Hopefully I can wear it proudly to the bar on Saturday night. I will regardless because I'm sure our boy is going to put on a great show. He's if anybody could do it, like he said it himself, if anybody could come off the couch, on 11 days notice and get this done against a guy like Islam Makhachev, there's nobody I would put higher up on that list than Alexander Volkanovski. And then number two, I'd probably put Mateusz Gamrot simply because he was waiting in the wings. He was the backup fighter for this one. I digress. Alexander Volkanovski, we saw the show that he put on the last time around. It wasn't like it was just such a great fight. Like it wasn't just like it was utter domination for Volk. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. Up until that fifth round when he beat the ever living shit out of Islam Makhachev for a couple of seconds there and just gave him the ultimate ground and pound. I would like to believe that this second matchup is going to pick immediately back up where the first one left off. I think that the circumstances surrounding this one kind of leave us open to a Islam Makhachev submission over Alexander Volkanovski. I don't think, obviously Volk is more in the media. He does more interviews, more podcasts. So we've heard his point of view after that fight. Islam Makhachev, all we hear from him are tweets sent out by, what's his manager's name? That Abdelaziz. So we haven't necessarily gotten Islam's true perspective on it, but I'd like to believe that Islam, being the fighter that he is and coming from the pedigree, took things away from that last fight, saw the criticism, didn't like the fact that it went to because I wouldn't, and I don't think anybody would, a tight split decision or a tight decision. So I think he's going to be seeking out the finish a little bit more. So like in those positions where he had Volk, with his hooks in and he had Volk's back and wasn't really looking to sink any chokes in and Volk is asking to get up. I think that in those positions, Islam is going to be far more aggressive looking for the choke. I like the respect that these two have for each other. It's immense and it's crazy. I mean, now I'm looking at the odds, plus 185 for Volk. I wish it was higher, but Vegas believes in Volk, like the people believe in Volk. Volk is truly the people's champion. And all the built-in excuses, like obviously they're there, the 11 days notice, whatever, Abu Dhabi, but, and we'll be talking about that, right? Like he only had 11 days, whatever. At the same time, he's not going to be looking for those excuses. And I think that people are just going to be overall more proud of the guy because he's given so much to us as fans of the sport. He only has 2 losses, and one of them are to Islam. And I really hope he avenges it. He's back with Craig Jones, who essentially told him the butterfly maneuver to get back up from Islam Makhachev's takedowns. Just flipping those hips, posturing up, and just pushing your way back up off the ground. Incredible jujitsu stuff. We saw Islam fight jujitsu practitioners, and Alexander Volkanovski just took the most important things and was able to apply them defensively against Islam. I think he's going to have been working on that because he did say like it's made him better as a fighter, and we saw that against Yair Rodriguez, the finish there, the takedown to just to end that fight, that scoop and dump up against the cage. He's evolved as a fighter. It's just the 11 days notice. How does that affect him? Because if this was he was scheduled to fight in January, if this was a full camp Volkanovski fighting in January and more friendly turf, he'd be a favorite, I think, actually against Islam. And, we'd be speaking about this very differently, but it's that 11 days notice. How is that going to impact him? Vegas doesn't think by much because I think he's a smaller dog than he was the last time around. So with all that being said, I'm going to go against Tom. I'm going to be taking Alexander Volkanovski this week for all those reasons I just said. I think potentially aggressiveness may not be in Islam Makhachev's favor. I think that Alexander Volkanovski, this is my last point, potentially coming off time with no camp, maybe a little bit less aggressive in this one and a little bit more counter. He may go for more counterattacks. Anyways, want to thank you all for tuning in this week. Make sure you check us out on Spotify, like and subscribe on YouTube, as well as leave comments down here. I know it's been a little bit. We had some friends that were popping in week after week. We're going to get back on that consistent schedule for you so you guys can pop back in and when we're going live. And we could chat with y'all again. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at Pickin' Fights. And then Tom is at Pickin' Fights Tom. I'm at Pickin' Keith. And I don't think I'm missing anything. So you people, you kind people at home, please enjoy the rest of your week. Do your best to get through it because we've got some incredible UFC coming up. Let us know what you think on Twitter. And if you're going to be rooting for Volk along with us, shoot me a follow and we can chat a bit. I'll follow back and we can talk on the Twitter. No, it's X now. All right, we can chat on X. Later, y'all.